Dear friends, as Vice Chair of the UDF, my role is that of a morale booster. I want everybody to perform to the best of their capacities. A morale booster supports you 24/7. Whether you are winning, whether you are losing, they are there, wearing your colors proudly, the way we do with the Uganda cranes. Even when we are clobbered, we go back home singing. The chairman, General Caleb Akandwanaho, Salim Saleh, his role is that of like a music conductor. He doesn't have to play any instrument, but he knows good music. So he chooses those of you who are here. You are the people who play the instruments very well in banking institutions, in private businesses, you are in industries, you are in academia, you are in the public service, you are on farms, you are all over the place. So what his role is like that of a magnifying glass to gather the scattered rays of the sun and focus it. And so I want in a special way to thank our very own Edward Katende. Where are you? Edward, come here and people see you. Edward performs a lot of slave labor in the UDF, teaching them what he knows and also learning from them, to the extent that now he can hold his own and have conversations with anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you are international diplomats, whether you are PhD scholars, whether you are political leaders like us. He has imbibed a lot of knowledge through this process of cross-fertilization that we call the UDF. Even us, the politicians, have been at the receiving end of some hard questions. He asked us the other day, what is your fundamental difference with President Museveni on the economy? Unfortunately, our media does not ask those kind of questions. Political leaders who want to lead this country come to your studios and you are on a side show. You are talking about skirmishes on the streets between security forces and political activists, and you don't ask somebody, what would you do differently? Now, I'll share with you a conversation that Ronald Reagan had with a little girl who he met, and he asked her, according to a video I saw, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the little girl says, I want to be president. And then he asked the little girl, what will be the first thing you do? And then the little girl says, there is a beggar on the street corner and I see that he's in great need. I want to give him money. I want to give him like $50. I think it can help him. So President Reagan tells the little girl, come and mow my lawn, slash my compound, and I'll give you the $50. Then you can give it to the beggar. And the little girl tells President Reagan, why doesn't the beggar go and slash your compound himself? And he earns that money. In other words, in this world, when you have earned your money, you really, really value it. And we need people to go to work. We want people to work, earn from their sweat. And anybody who has worked and earned money does not just want to part with it easily. And that's why people don't want governments on their backs. Now, General Saleh now has a fully fledged think tank around him, and there are many of you around here. Please stand up. The team of advisors. I see my uncle General Idro there, the Honorable David Pulkol, and there are many others all over here. Now, connected to these people are the rest of you who I see debating very serious issues online. I've not yet had the courage to contribute because really the debate is high voltage. I'm a bit intimidated. Now, that is what this gathering is about. The purpose of the General's address is to identify the target, as you have said here. The last time we gathered, I advised people not to shoot with shotguns, because when you shoot with a shotgun, you injure many, but you kill none. So you injure many problems, but you solve none. You need to shoot with a rifle, and that is what the general is now interested in. And for that purpose, he has decided to camp in Gulu, my town. And targets have got to be realizable. You talked about Kennedy declaring that in our generation, America shall put a man on the moon. And they did. You also remember we once had a president here who also was fond of declaring targets. There was a time he said he was going to capture Golan Heights. He declared war on the apartheid regime in South Africa and organized jets to throw bombs in Lake Victoria as a rehearsal for capturing Cape Town. And during a dinner in London, not to be outdone by the Americans and their space endeavors, he announced that Uganda would now go to the sun in order to outdo America. And when he was asked by another dignitary at the table, how do you intend to do that, Your Excellency? Our beloved life president then said, we shall go there at night because the sun is very hot. Obviously, that attracted another heartfelt laughter bout. And then one commentator said, Your Excellency, you surely know how to blow your own trumpet. Again, not to be outdone, he stood up and said, No. I also play accordion. Obviously, he was not aware that blowing trumpets is a figure of speech. It has nothing to do with music. So, I'm glad the targets that we have here are said to be ideological. Our chairman has very strong beliefs. And in this world, we need believers, first and foremost. Because those who believe don't give up. That is what matters. One day, I had the courage to ask the president of Uganda a question. Mr. President, why do you keep going? Why don't you give up? He was amused by that question because it was in public. When he got up to speak, he said, Mao has asked me why I keep going. Then he said, I'm going to answer him. I keep going because I'm sure of where I want to go. I have no doubts. So we believe that all of us here are true believers in the future potential of Uganda. Whether we achieve everything we are talking about in our lifetime or not, our belief should be the common denominator bringing us together based on what is in our heart. Love for our country, love for our fellow human being. And that is why this gathering is not just about degrees. How many PhDs you have, how many masters, and so on and so on. It is about here, which takes me to Cuba. Che Guevara, who you all know, was fond of being absent-minded in meetings. And he was in one meeting, and El Comandante Fidel Castro was speaking. On that day, on the agenda was to choose the chairman of the central bank, which we call a governor here. So Fidel Castro asked, do we have an economist in this meeting? And the absent-minded chair put up his hand And then Fidel Castro rebuked him. Che, you are not an economist at all. And then Che said, sorry, El Comandante, I thought you had asked whether we have a communist in this meeting. And then Fidel Castro said, you have the job, because that's exactly what we need. We need first and foremost a communist who believes in our mission. The rest are details. Now that we have identified ourselves as true believers, now that we have identified ourselves as people who will not deceive each other, it is okay for IMF to deceive us, it is okay for the World Bank to deceive us, but it is more tragic when we deceive ourselves. And that's why I like the intense debate here. Talking about deception and self-deception, there's a lady here in this room, the Honorable Kabakumba. Where are you? The Honorable Kabakumba was a student in Sacred Heart. And apparently there was a young man in St. Joseph's College, Laibi, who admired her so much, but he had never spoken to her and had never met. It so happens that the Honorable Kabakumba was a topic of discussion in the boys' dormitory.